The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Here's what's cooking on today's Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show. We've got late round bloomers, guys who are now dependable fantasy players, drafted late or undrafted in fantasy drafts. We got the latest Major League Baseball news, including the Ronald Acuna injury, and the ads and drops off the waiver wire this week. That's what's cooking on today's Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show.
Play ball!
Welcome in to another edition of the Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show, presented by Belly Up Fantasy Sports, Righteous Felon Jerky, and Seat Geek. Another wonderful week of fantasy baseball is in the books. We're getting ready to flip the page to another week, and we're going to get you ready for that week as well. I'm your host, Vince Stover. I am joined, as I am every Wednesday, by the senior writer from Belly Up Fantasy Sports. And coming in today, pitching with a 6.35 ERA, the one and only Kevin Wilson. Hey, Kev, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Vince. And, it's Memorial Day weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And so in recognition of that, I've got my camouflage Padres jersey on. Okay. And just like to give a shout out to those who have lost family members. Yeah. We're in the military who gave up the ultimate sacrifice so that the rest of us could live our lives. So just a shout out to them. And it's a great weekend. It's been a great sports weekend. And so we always Christian things at the end with our fantasy show. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be a great show. We got plenty of things to talk about
today. We certainly do.
Including the come from behind win in fantasy baseball this week. I took a picture. It was about 2 hours ago.
That's when the white flag appeared.
The picture here. Today at 6:19. So that was almost exactly 2 hours ago. I took a picture and me and you were tied 377 to 377. You had some Yankees players. I had some San Diego players and Yankees players. We both had pitchers going, all that kind of stuff. And needless to say, when it's all said and done, I come out with the victory. A big win this week, really, a needed win in our league right now. And so I solidify my spot in the playoff race along with my dad. And we've got you one game back on this one right now. So.
Yeah, I really needed this one as well, Vince, because last week I took on Dan, who was unbeaten. Then I'm playing you, and then this week coming up, I've got Chase, who's unbeaten.
Yeah.
Okay, so critical 3-week stretch, and so far I'm limping to the finish line. So.
We'll talk a little bit more about today's end of our matchup when we get to our ads and drops for today as well. But let's jump into segment number 1 today, which is our fantasy burner segment. The fantasy burner segment is presented by Seat Geek. Let's say that in about a week and a half, you're going to drive down to Florida to spend some time with your in-laws. So you're looking for a way to maybe get a little time away from the in-laws while you're down there. And you realize that the Tampa Bay Rays are hosting the Baltimore Orioles. So you look up some tickets on SeatGeek. You see them for $12 a piece, sitting out in the second row up in right field. And you say, you know what? I'm taking my family to a baseball game. You can go to SeatGeek.com, order it, use the code BellyUpSports. You're going to save $20, just like I did 2 nights ago to order my tickets for when I'm down in Tampa. So we're going to go watch the Rays and the Orioles play.
How cool is that?
Mondays. Yeah. So I was pretty excited about that. Got a pretty good deal along with getting the $20 discount as well. So it works. SeatGeek.com. Use the code BellyUpSports to get your $20 off your purchase. All right, Kev, we're looking at guys that we drafted or even went undrafted at the beginning of the year that now are locks for the rest of the season, guys that you're not going to cut, guys that you're going to be on your roster now. because they have proven their worth. I've got, I told you we would do 3. I got 5 because I figured we're probably going to interact a little bit on some of these. So I'll let you start with a guy that maybe either went undrafted or drafted late in the draft and now is a lock for your roster.
All right. So there are so many guys. You almost don't know where to start. But the key to this is going forward. Who do we think is going to maintain what they're doing? And so I took that into account. And the first player that I came up with was actually drafted in the last round of our draft. And that is, in fact, Miguel, if I'm saying that correctly, Garcia, the third baseman for the Kansas City Royals.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he was, like I said, he was a last round draftee, but currently he is the 4th ranked fantasy third baseman in points leagues right now. And 269, 5 homers, 33 RBIs, 13 stolen bases, 31 runs. He has hits in 13 straight games as we're speaking right now. And this is a guy who bats leadoff. And Kansas City has a solid lineup. He's got Witt behind him, Pasquantino, if he'd ever really get involved. And then he's got Salvador Perez behind that. So I see no drop-off coming for him. All hitters go through little rough patches or whatever, but I think that he's going to be a solid player for the rest of the season. I have 2 fantasy teams of which he's on both.
Yeah.
And so I am quite pleased that I have Miguel Garcia on my fantasy team. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what he's going to do. So he was at the top of my list as someone that is, as you mentioned, not droppable, but also you don't want to sell high because I think he's going to continue to do it the whole rest of the season.
Yeah, I like that one. I think him batting leadoff all season, it's hard to pass on leadoff guys. They're getting a lot of at-bats. Obviously, if they don't perform, they won't stay there. So, yeah, I like that one. I think Garcia's a good one. I went with another infielder, and right now he's owned in 84% of leagues, rightfully so. But in our draft, he was taken 249th overall, and it's Jordan Westburg from Baltimore. The Orioles' second base, third base in fantasy, 8 home runs, 5 stolen bases, 31 RBIs. He's batting 285. He's right there in the top sections of your fantasies, position wise for second base and third base. And he's doing really what we thought other young Orioles would do. The reason why he went so late in our draft was the thought process was maybe he would lose playing time with Holiday and some other young guys around. The reality is he's solidified himself in that Baltimore lineup. And as a fantasy threat, I mean, my goodness, he's been phenomenal this year, giving a little bit of versatility with the second base and third base as well. And I think Jordan Westburg is going to get drafted a whole lot higher next year than he did this year.
That's a pretty safe bet. And so the next guy that I have was also a 26th and final round draft in our league. And that's Nestor Cortez of the New York Yankees. And the Yankees have been hot, unfortunately, except for today when I needed it. All right. But can't blame that on Nestor Cortez. Even though he's 3-4, it's kind of hard to fathom that. He's 3-4, but his ERA is 3.29, a 1.07 whip. That's pretty microscopic. 20 fantasy points in 3 of his last 4 starts. At least 6 innings pitched and 5 straight. Up until Wednesday when he went 5. And so his last 2 starts, 12 innings, no runs, 8 hits, 12 strikeouts, 4 base on balls. And so we see no chance that the Yankees are going to cool off. And so anyone that's in their starting rotation is going to get run support. And so I think that as a last round draft pick, and also on my fantasy team, one of them I'm happy to say. And so he's a guy who he's going to pitch. He's going to get his stats. And so he's another guy that, you'd really have to come in with a pretty strong offer to me to consider trading him at this point.
Yeah, definitely. Sticking with pitchers, the number one fantasy scoring pitcher in our league, Ranger Suarez, went undrafted. He was added as a free agent, as on waiver wire. He was released. He was picked up by you, Kevin. He was released.
Yeah,
He was
you don't
picked
need
up
to talk
again
about that.
by Nathan Nguyen, who originally picked him up, and he's not going to get released again. 9-0 on the year, 68 strikeouts. He's a 1.36 ERA, a 0.79 WHIP. 254 fantasy points. Oh, and by the way, on Saturday, he's playing St. Louis, so he's going to probably be up to 300 by the end of the week. The reality is Ranger Suarez, listen, he's not a stranger. People knew who Ranger Suarez was coming into the year, but fantasy relevance was not something we were expecting from him. And as a streamer, maybe something like that. But to come in and dominate the way he has, I won't be surprised if he gets suspended for something that doesn't add up at some point, just the route that he's going this year. Ranger Suarez has turned it on, and again, undrafted in our league, and number one in fantasy points right now this season. So that's clearly one he's a lock. And again, next year, his draft stock goes way up.
I considered him very significantly, but he's going to pitch well the rest of the way, but there's zero chance, I think, of him maintaining this pace. He is so far out above what he's been in the past. And so I suspect that he'll come back down to earth a little bit. And so that's why I did not include him in here. He's very well easily could have. Yeah. And the same thing with Seth Lugo. I did not include him for the exact same reason. Even though I would be absolutely pleased to have him. I would be absolutely pleased because when I dropped him, I saw him as a streamer guy, just like you're saying.
Right.
But he's gone completely over the edge with that. And so I did not include him on that. And so, but I did include another Yankee who went in the 23rd round of our draft, and that's Anthony Volpe. A shortstop that I think we can say we weren't particularly high on coming into the season. He had an uneven rookie season a year ago. And so that's why I was able to draft him in the 23rd round overall. But he is currently the number 2 shortstop in fantasy leagues. And so 282, 6 homers, 23 RBIs, 10 stolen bases, 35 runs. And best of all, he's on a 19-game hitting streak.
Wow.
So in the last 7 games, he has 2 or more hits. Oh, in 7 of those games, he has 2 or more hits. I'm sorry. And runs in 5 straight games. And he's hitting, you talk about leadoff guys. He's hitting at the top of that lineup. And then he's got Judge and Soto and Rizzo and Giancarlo Stanton behind him. That is the most stacked lineup around. And so he is going to continue with these stats building the rest of the year. And so there's zero chance that someone can come in and offer me something, unless it really blew my eyeballs to the back of my head, that I would trade Anthony Volpe, even though he was a 23rd round draft pick. He is an all-star shortstop, an all-star fantasy player, so he goes right to the top of my list as well.
I like it. I do want to mention Seth Lugo. He's not going to be my last one, but Lugo was added in free agency, undrafted in our league, added by Kevin, dropped by Kevin, added by Kevin, dropped by Kevin, added by Nguyen, who keeps him still. So he's got the top 2 pitchers, both of which were on your roster at some point early in April as well. And I'm sure that doesn't sting at all when you look at
not even a little, Vince. Not even a little.
My last guy is going to be an outfielder. I believe he's only owned in 60-something% of leagues, 69.8% of leagues right now. He was drafted 189th overall. and right there in the middle of the draft. And but it's the Boston Red Sox outfielder Jarren Duran. He has put on a really good start to the season. Didn't do great against Milwaukee this week, but had a really good series against Tampa, and has had a really solid year as well. You look at that Boston team, again, they're not spectacular, but they're better than probably they should be, at least in my opinion. And Jarren Duran has been one of those guys who has put it on this year and earned that everyday playing time, and is a guy that I believe you can count on throughout the rest of the season as well. And he's a guy you might be able to find on the waiver wire, depending on your league right now, and depending on how many Red Sox fans you have in your league. But that being said, I thought he was worthy of a mention here in this section as well. There. So, Kevin, anything else you want to add to this topic?
I had another guy, and that's Giancarlo Stanton before he struck out 3 times a day and soured me on him.
Yeah.
But he was another guy who went late and has outperformed what we've seen of him in the past, where he's played and then played hurt. But he's not been hurt. And the Yankees are doing it smart. They're keeping him off the field. They're keeping him as a DH. And if you can stomach, which I have to because he's on my fantasy team, but if you can, he's going to strike out a few times.
Yeah.
But if you saw that home run he hit on Friday, was a massive shot. And so he's going to be, it looks like he's going to play the whole season. And so he's a guy who, and most importantly, though, is in our league, we've got the DH spot in our lineup. And so when I thought about putting that in our league, I thought it would be like baseball and you could slide anybody in the DH spot that you wanted. However, that is not the case.
Not the case.
They actually had to be qualified as a DH. And so, those are kind of hard to come by. And so if you have that same thing where you have a DH, Giancarlo Stanton can solve a lot of problems in that spot for you.
Very true. Very true. All right. That's our Fantasy Burner presented by SeatGeek.com. Make sure you check it out. Use the code BELLYUPSPORTS at checkout to get $20 off your purchase. Let's head into segment number 2 that is named The Call to the Pin. Our call to the pin is presented by Righteous Felon Jerky. Time to join the flavor revolution, and you can do it at righteousfelon.com. And if you use the code STOVE15, STOVE15, you're going to get 15% off your purchase each and every time. And I promise, if you order once, you will order again. It's phenomenal jerky. Some of my favorite flavors are right up here behind me. Check it out. Find your new favorite flavor, righteousfelon.com. Use the code STOVE15 at checkout. Kevin, we've talked about the Braves throughout the year already, and now Ronald Acuna Jr. is on the IL. What is going on in Atlanta? Because it is not pretty.
It is not pretty. And there's a lot of things that we might have been able to lead off in this news segment, but that takes us top spot, of course. And it's really amazing to me when you have a guy, whether it's football, baseball, whatever, who gets hurt and no one is anywhere around him. And so non-contact injury, and it seems like the no-contact injuries are sometimes the absolute worst.
Right.
And so I'm fearing for the worst for here, and he's going to get an MRI, and IL is likely. And so
he's on. He went on the IL today.
Okay, so he wasn't playing that well. Certainly not as you would expect to the number 1 draft pick. I've talked about that before. But you thought you would get it together at some point. But now you're stuck,
right?
Because no one's going to trade for him, if depending on what the news is. But what does Atlanta do? They lost their top starting pitcher. Now they've lost their top offensive player, their top player, period. And so even though they won today, and so Philadelphia is running away with things in that division, and so they're just going to have to figure out a way to tread water, I guess, the rest of the way, because this is not looking good.
Yeah, I mean, Marcelo Zuna is basically leading all the stat categories for Atlanta. Michael Harris has been playing really good baseball as well. So, Acuna not doing great. And honestly, not just him, but Olsen hasn't been great either
No,
this year.
Olsen, no, and the third baseman has disappeared
Riley,
completely.
Yeah, I wish
Riley,
they would have put him on IL. My
I
goodness.
don't. If someone could please explain that, because he's missed every game since the 12th.
Yeah.
So they could have put him on the IL.
Yep.
And I made a comment about that. Someone was asking about that in one of the Facebook groups earlier. And obviously, they did not expect him to miss this many games.
Right. Yeah.
And
the baseball gods are impacting Atlanta right now because fantasy owners everywhere are just dying. They got Riley sitting on their roster. They just need him to go on IL so they can pick someone up. Yeah, you've got him in our league. I've got him in another league. I mean,
and there's no way you can drop him.
Oh, no.
There's no way, even though he has not been playing that well either.
Right.
And so there's no way you could trade him. There's no way you could drop him. So you have to live with it. What I'm hearing is he's going to play tomorrow. Is the last thing that I heard. But in any case, Atlanta, it's not working out as well as they thought down there. So
Chris
it gets
Sale
hot in Atlanta, so fans may not have the. He pitched today, and he's been everything.
Yeah, he's been good.
He's been good. So you got to be pleased with him. And Fried, whatever he is.
Fried, yeah.
Yes, and Ronald Lopez is another one. So they've been able to weather Strider a little bit. But how do you weather both of those guys? I don't know.
Atlanta's really hurt is that they've got 4 pitchers who have pitched decent. So you've got Sale and Lopez who have been really good. Fried and Morton have been, average to above average as well. But offensively, they got to find more going on there, and they just really struggled. And Philadelphia, of course, has been really good. In the last time we talked about the NL West, it was just how pathetic everybody is except for the Dodgers. And all of a sudden, San Diego and San Francisco found their way to 500 throughout this week. And now they're still, 5.5 back from the Dodgers, but 5.5 is not that much. And are we going to see some teams become relevant in the West outside of the Dodgers, who lost 5 straight, by the way?
That's, including, most embarrassingly, getting swept by the Cincinnati Reds, who were doomed. We talked about that as well. And but all the Dodgers went into Cincinnati and got blowed out. And so when you look at the standings, the Giants are in right now as a playoff team. And the reason why you might be saying, well, how is that possible? Because there are 5 teams in the NL that have winning records. That's all. And so we've talked about, the Phillies have only beaten 3 teams that have winning record. But if there's only 5, that's not really a concern. So San Francisco, San Diego, they can both keep their, oars in the water and keep treading. And I highly suspect the Dodgers will get it together again, because before that they were playing well. And so, but they were playing well at home, and they got to hit the road at some point, which they now are. And we'll just see what happens the rest of the way. But if you're the Giants or the Padres, you just say, hey, we'll do our part and see what happens from here.
Yeah. Now, the Phillies played the Rockies today and lost, by the way.
2 out of 3.
Yeah, but this week they did play some teams, the Rangers, and well, they haven't played any good teams in a while, actually.
No.
So anyways,
you want to talk about the Rangers, because let's see, the Rangers, they're -10 in their run differential. So they're not a team who's certainly not what they were a year ago. And talk about losing pitchers and everything else. And Corey Seager showed up today.
He did.
He did indeed. And that's great for them, because Simeon has pretty much, went to, we need him on a milk carton somewhere along the way. And so beating the Rangers, and that was one of the footnotes this week is a Ranger pitched against the Rangers this
That's
week.
right.
So
Yeah.
another shout out to Ranger Suarez, because I don't know how many times a pitcher has pitched against a team with his own name. So probably not
True
too
that.
many, I would imagine.
Let's wrap up the NL with the NL Central. Milwaukee 3 games up on Chicago. No other team over 500. St. Louis is now 3rd in the division. They've climbed up. They're still 2 games under 500. Pittsburgh is in 4th, and the Reds, even with their 3-game win streak, are still dead last. But we've talked about this being the Brewers and the Cubs, really a 2-man race. Cubs did not have a good week this week as well, which brings us to our weekly Council Curse Tracker. If you're tuning into the program for the first time, our Council Curse Tracker is just tracking all that the baseball gods do to Chicago this year, because Craig Council is a horrible human being. And so stabbed the Brewers in the back and went to Chicago. The baseball gods were not pleased. We told you this from back in February. I warned you. I said, be careful, because the Cubs are going to be cursed this year. And few people listened. But here we go. Next thing up in the Council Curse. How about Hendricks? No longer a rotation pitcher. He's now in the bullpen.
That's right. I have him written down here to talk about this. So,
okay. Well, let's talk about it. What do you got?
I got him written down. He's given up 7 runs. Okay. He gave up 7 runs in his last start, but he's given up 7 runs in 3 of his last 5 starts. Ooh. That's pretty hard to do. And so that's brutal. And as you mentioned, he's now in the bullpen, which, that's the last stop to, the street. And so he's, he's going downhill. And but he's not the only one. And you look at this, the Cubs are only won 3 of their last 10. They're now -2 in run differential. And let's see, Michael Busch is 1 for 15. Christopher Morel is 1 for 14. Suzuki is 3 for 23. Bellinger's 3 for 20. So it took a while, because it looked like the Cubs were ignoring the curse, successfully for a while, but they're sliding, and so the curse is fully impacting their team at this point.
What do you make about, moving on from the Cubs, what do you make about St. Louis? 4-game win streak right now. They're 2 games under 500. It's a division that's not great. So a nice second half of the season could see St. Louis sitting in the playoffs.
This is amazing. Okay, because they were in last place for the longest time, but they're 1 game out of the playoffs right now. 1, and there's no way we could have conceived of that a month, even 2 weeks ago, maybe even last week. And so let's see, but they're -42. I think that's all a little a mirage when it comes to the Cardinals. So maybe if because they're 8-2, they in their last 10, and so maybe they could do it, but I'm still not ready to board the St. Louis Cardinals belief train just yet.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. They don't have any player that's standing out offensively. Their leading home run getter as of right now is Nolan Gorman. So that's not good.
That's not good at all.
Their offense has, they got to find their groove, especially the older guys. As far as pitching goes, again, Sonny Gray has been their best pitcher so far. Gibson has been average-ish. Lynn has been average-ish. Mikolas has been horrible, of course, and Matz has been bad too. So they've got to find some consistency for sure, and maybe a little luck along the way. Maybe they make a move. Maybe they go out and get somebody. I'm trying to think. I didn't think about this ahead of time. So maybe there's a team that's struggling that's willing to let go of somebody good. Maybe the Mets are willing to let go of somebody. Maybe I'm trying to think who else is bad. Toronto. Been a lot of rumors about Toronto willing to trade everybody. So, there's options out there to go out and grab somebody that can maybe boost your team getting over the top.
That's true. And, you mentioned Nicholas. I saw this stat the other day that the league average against him, it's the 5th worst of any pitcher in the entire National League.
Ugh.
And so he gets guys on base, and once you get guys on base, they're eventually going to come around to score. And so no one believes in Nicholas. I will not board the Lynn train. Okay.
Yeah.
Not doing that.
Agreed.
And because he's burned me successfully in the past, so that's not happening this year. So St. Louis fans are probably the best fans, maybe, in baseball. So, good for them. But the rest of everybody else is kind of So we'll see what happens.
I don't want to close out this segment without talking about what's going on in the AL Central. The Guardians on a 9-game win streak, and yet they still can't pull away from the Royals.
That's right. Because the Royals won 8 straight. They lost today.
Yes.
And
let's talk about Cleveland, though, because they've been so good.
Yep, Cleveland and plus 72 run differential, as you mentioned, 9 straight. And Kansas City's 2.5 back, thanks to their 8 games. How frustrating must that be? That you win 8 straight games and you're still 2.5 out.
Yeah.
And so Minnesota, the rest of that division, we probably really don't need to talk about at all. But Cleveland, they've got the offense, they've got the defense, they've got the bullpen. And it certainly helps when you're playing the Angels. No question about that.
Yeah. They've got the Rockies next, followed by the Nationals, and then they'll face off against the Royals in Cleveland, which will be a fun series for sure as well. And KC has a better run differential than Cleveland, and they're right there. I mean, they're right there. But Cleveland has been so good. They've had some injuries, and yet still. Is Jose Ramirez the greatest player that no one talks about?
Absolutely. If let's say you're walking around in a stadium and you walked up to a fan and you asked them, "Hey, who's the Cleveland Guardians starting third baseman?" How many people do you think would be able to answer that question?
Yeah, hopefully more than not. But
hopefully
you're right.
more than not. Yeah. But yeah, so he doesn't get any. If he was on any other team, he'd be celebrated from sea to shining sea.
Yeah,
and so. But he's not the only one that's doing it for them.
No.
And
Andres Jimenez is having a phenomenal season.
And he's a guy that we probably could have talked about earlier.
Yep.
And so you got to like what Cleveland's doing. When Shane Bieber went down, I was like, uh-oh. But they've weathered that.
Yeah.
And so,
they don't have...
Place is an outstanding closer, so they've got that role locked in. So what's to stop them? They're in the playoffs. You could be sure of that.
They haven't been dominant in pitching, starting pitching especially, but they've done enough, and the offense has been obviously good enough. We're scoring 263 runs this season, which I think, I'm looking real quick, is just behind the Yankees and the Dodgers and the Phillies. So right there with the top teams in the league. Cleveland's legit, and I think Kansas City is too. I'm so impressed with what Kansas City's doing.
And I'll take the victory laps wherever I can get them. And because I suspected that Kansas City was going to be pretty good this year, and also I was on board the Salvador Perez train way early on.
Yeah,
and so like I said, that top of their lineup is stellar. Even though they lost their second baseman, Massey, is that what it is?
Yep.
To the IL today, so we'll have to see how that impacts them. But other than that, these two teams are teams that you're going to have to look out for coming down the stretch.
I don't have it in front of me as far as what the league leader is, but Bobby Witt Jr. has a 3.5 WAR, and I'm pretty sure that's up there at the top for the year as well. Witt has been exactly what everyone hoped he would be, but the pitching is what's so surprising out of Kansas City this year.
Absolutely.
Lugo has been incredible, 1.74 ERA. Singer has been really good at 2.63. Reagan's has been solid. Waka has been but everyone else is performing there in Kansas City. And like we said, the offense is definitely putting it on there as well. I think that series against Cleveland late next week is going to be, 2 weeks from now, a week from today, is going to be really entertaining to watch. I'll be intrigued to see how that one turns out.
Absolutely. And so, we talked about Ranger and we talked about Lugo. Are those the two guys that right now you would have as your starting pitchers in the National and American Leagues in the All-Star game?
Oh, man.
I think they are.
I mean, statistically, they should be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Maybe that wouldn't draw in the fans like they like them. But,
Sure.
but strictly speaking of stats and everything else, they're the ones that should be the starters in the All-Star game.
Yeah, I agree. I agree completely. All right, let's get to what the people came for. But the Call to the Pin is presented by righteousfelon.com. Use that code STOVE15 at checkout. You're going to get 15% off your purchase. Let's get into our waiver wire pickups in a segment we call the Fantasy Focus. Our Fantasy Focus is presented by BellyUpFantasySports.com, your one-stop shop for all articles pertaining to fantasy sports. And, of course, it's the place where you can find all of Kevin Wilson's articles as well. All right, let's get into our ads and drops this week. I'm excited. I got some fun ones to go in this week. I'm interested to see who you have going this week. So I want to start with the drops. I got 2 of those. I want to get that out of the way. Then we'll get to the fun ads for this week. So who do you have to drop this week?
Okay, so first guy that this is kind of like a public service announcement, okay? Because Sean Boz of the Tampa Bay Rays was taken off the IL. And so people were probably expecting, okay, he's going to get in their rotation. Well, guess what? He's in AAA. Okay, so if you're thinking that he has a 6 ERA in the minors, that's bad. And so if you're in a league like ours or 12-man or maybe even more than that, there's no reason to hold on to Shane Boz as a pitcher and have him hold down a roster spot, because who knows when he comes up, and even when he does, I'm not encouraged in any way, shape, or form. And so people might have been stashing him on the IL, but you can't do that anymore. Yeah, even though he's still in the minor league. So if you're having him, you can't stash him on your IL. He's got to go.
I like it. While you were talking, I looked up the WAR leaders in the league just to do it. Gunnar Henderson and Mookie Betts lead the league at 3.7. Bobby Witt is second at 3.5. So there you go.
There you have it. So don't
right
say
above
no
Aaron
stats
Judge
on the show, right? Don't say that.
Right above Aaron Judge, Kyle Tucker, and Shohei Ohtani. So it's a pretty good year, I'd say, right now for him. All right, back to drops. 75.9% owned in fantasy leagues, according to ESPN. The Chicago Cubs outfielder, you mentioned him earlier, Kevin, Seiya Suzuki, 1 fantasy point since May the 17th. Why in the world, in the position that has so many players, would you keep him on your roster? So I say drop Seiya Suzuki and keep an eye on him. He's a player that can come back around for sure. But right now, to be owned in 75% of leagues, almost 76% of leagues, to me, that's a little wild. I think he should be down a lot more than that. I think now's the right time to let him go. And
so I agree with that 100%. And this guy is the guy that I talked about last week, but he's still at 55.5% rostered. And it really confuses me how he's that high rostered. And so I'm going to talk about him again, and that's Reed Detmers. Okay, of the Angels. He's given up 31 runs in his last 6 starts and has 16 fantasy points during that time. In 6 starts.
Yeah.
I bet that if you or I made 6 starts, we'd probably get more than 16 fantasy points. Okay. And so I don't understand this percentage at all. And 55.5%, he has fallen completely apart. And there is no way that he should be that high rostered. make it 5.5% rostered and do it immediately. This guy, to me, has no value fantasy-wise, period. So everybody,
Yeah.
please don't do that to yourself.
Yeah, you will not catch me adding Reed Detmers. Even when it comes to a day like today where I was trying to add guys to get points, he's not one of the guys I would add.
No, like I said,
whatsoever.
don't do that to you're torturing yourself for, there's no reason for it.
Yeah, if he's playing Chicago White Sox,
No.
that's the only time you can even consider it. But yeah, I'm not picking up Reed Detmers, that's for sure. All right, I've got a guy 19.5% owned. He's a catcher. He was hot there for a while. The Oakland Athletics, Shea Langeliers. Listen, and he had a decent day today, actually. But coming into the day, he'd only scored 7 fantasy points over a 10-day period of time. And there's too many catchers out there right now that are doing better than that. Again, he did have a good day today, scored 6 fantasy points, got a home run today against Houston. But that being said, I just feel like his hot streak is over. It's time to move on to somebody else. He's not a guy that you're going to keep on your roster year round. He's a guy you're going to get on there when he's streaming and doing well. Right now is not that time. And I think with all A's players, you need to be aware they went on a hot streak, but they're starting to slow it down a little bit. And I think at catcher, you can find someone better than Shea Langeliers right now for your roster. I
agree with that. And if you look, there are probably more than one catcher that we could list here. And so, and there are some catchers, and one of which I'm going to talk about when we get to our ads. And so if you've got a catcher who's not performing, find someone, because there are some players out there who are, in fact. And so, let's see, a guy that who's on the Dodgers. I hate to mention this, but and that's Andy Pages. Okay. Outfielder, Los Angeles Dodgers, in a 1-for-21 slump currently. And there's outfielders, as you mentioned, who will give you more than 1-for-21. And he has just 16 RBIs on the year. And come on, even as a Dodger guy, Andy Pages does not need to be on a fantasy roster.
Fair. Very fair. I've got nobody else to drop this week. Kevin, you got anybody else?
Just one guy, one that you told me and warned me about, which I dropped him the very next day, I might add, and that's Ahmad Rosario, Tampa. Okay. And you know how many hits he has this week? Can you take a guess how many hits he has this week?
For the whole week, give me I'll say one just to play it safe.
That would be
0.
And he's only played in 3 games.
Oh my.
3. Okay. So Tampa obviously does not believe in him. He's got all this eligibility, but that goes straight down the chute because he's not playing.
Yeah, he's on the bench.
And so Tampa, we want, at least I like to, there are other people that don't believe in Tampa and haven't believed in him, but the rose is off, the smell's off the rose with them. And so Rosario leads the way. He needs to be off your roster if you've got him, even though you like his eligibility, but still, come on, he's got to go.
And what's wild is they still haven't called up Junior Caminero, and I just don't know why.
I don't get that.
Yeah, I don't get it. So I'm hoping that when I go see that Rays Orioles game, he's up there and he's playing by that point. That's what I'm hoping for.
That would be good.
All right, let's get into additions this week, and I'm really curious to see who you got for us this week, Kev. So who do you have first off?
Okay, so I just talked about Tampa and the smells off the road, but my leadoff ad is in fact a Tampa Bay Ray.
Okay,
he's at 14.9% rostered, and that's Zach Littell.
Okay,
all right. He's 2-2 with a 3.42 ERA, but he has 132 fantasy points. And let's see, versus Boston, you get 5.2 innings, 2 runs on 3 hits, 7 Ks, 1 walk. Fewer than 2 base on balls in 6 of his last 7 starts. And best of all, as we talk about matchups are being just as or even more important than stats. That was one of the conversations I had yesterday, that the matchups have to be taken into account. and he's got the Oakland A's
Oh, wow.
this week. And so he leads my, even though I just talked bad about a little about Tampa Bay, but Zach Littell is my leadoff guy. He's the top pitching ad that I have this week.
Very good. One of the things you're looking for on waiver wire pickups is guys getting opportunities, and that comes with injuries. And that's exactly what's happened in Philadelphia with Trey Turner going down. Edmundo Sosa steps in, 2.9% owned. He's third base and shortstop eligible. He had a stellar week this week against Texas and Colorado. 3 home runs on the year, 2 stolen bases. He's batting .333 with 13 RBIs and 17 runs. Listen, he's on a loaded roster on a very good team, and that's a great opportunity for young guys. And Sosa has stepped right in, filled in for Trey Turner. Now, again, when Trey Turner comes back, what does that mean for him? That's another conversation for when that time comes. But for now, Sosa's a great addition to your team, especially being shortstop and third base eligible.
And he was a guy I looked at and didn't come up with, so I'm glad that you did.
Okay.
And so, when we were talking about our standings, we didn't mention the Houston Astros,
right,
who have pulled themselves up to third. And one of the reasons why is Jake Myers. Okay,
Yeah.
He's at 6.3% roster, 289, 6 homers, 21 RBIs. He has hits in 8 of his last 10. Of those 10 games, he scored 7 runs, 9 RBIs, and hit 3 home runs. And so he is about as hot as you could possibly get a guy. We talked about outfielders who are much better than some of the other guys we just talked about. And so at 6.3% roster, that's embarrassingly low. And so he needs to be on much more teams than that. So if you need any help in the outfield spots, go and get him.
I'm glad that you said him. I did not put him on my list this week. He is on one of my fantasy teams as well. And I was introduced to him in the Milwaukee series. And, and so when I came on to him, and he's been playing really, really good baseball for sure. One of the things I'm looking at with waiver wire pickups is if I can find a guy who is a late addition to the everyday lineup. And Nick Gonzalez is just that. He's now the everyday second baseman in Pittsburgh. He's also eligible for shortstop in fantasy baseball. He's only 4.2% owned, but like I said, he's playing every day. He's batting 5th in the lineup, so he's getting a lot of at-bats. In his short amount of time, he's already to 44 fantasy points. He's hitting over 300 at 308, 2 home runs, 2 stolen bases, 14 RBIs, and 8 runs. He had a really good series against Atlanta this week as well. And he's one of those guys, again, giving you second base and shortstop. He's available in pretty much every league out there, and he's really giving you everyday usage. So Nick Gonzalez is a prime pickup right now where they are in Pittsburgh.
I agree with that one. And so I mentioned catching help a moment ago, and one of those guys, maybe unbelievably enough, plays for the Angels, and that's Logan O'Hoppe. He's at 24.5% rostered, which means he may not be as available as some of these other guys, but he's still 75% on waivers out there. So if you need catcher help, 263, 5 homers, 24 RBIs. He has hits in 4 of his last 5 games with 2 homers and 5 RBIs. If you need catching help, catching, you take what you can get. And so if Logan O'Hoppe will give you some stats. And so if you need that, go and get him and just ride him while he's hot and look for the next guy. But right now, Logan O'Hoppe is a catcher worth rostering.
I like it. We like streaming pitchers around here, and I added a pitcher this morning to help me beat Kevin today, and worth bringing up, I think. 13.2% owned. He's pitching for the AL Central leading Cleveland Guardians, Ben Lively, who's been really good as of late. He went the farthest he's gone all season in the game today, 7 innings. He had 5 strikeouts, 24 fantasy points, getting the win. He was 22 points against the Mets in his last start. He had 2 other 20-point performances. He's only been under 11 points once this season. He's 3-2 on the year, 2.84 ERA, 38 strikeouts, and 100 fantasy points on the season. His next matchup is Saturday against the Nationals. So again, I don't know that I'd keep him on my roster all the time, but as a streaming option, especially when the matchup is good, Ben Lively has proven himself to be dependable, especially for that last-second addition to get the win on a Sunday afternoon.
You're absolutely right, and good on you for seeing that. As I was looking for some guys to add, and the guys I added wasn't like they
They did fine. They got double digits.
Yeah, it wasn't like they went out in the back and fell into the to a mud pie or anything like that. But that is the guy who, as you mentioned, has put together the fantasy stats you're looking for, and so I'm totally down with that. And the last guy is somebody I really can't believe I'm going to mention, because he plays for the absolute worst team in baseball, and that's the Chicago White Sox.
Okay.
Okay, and he's at 10.1% rostered, and that's Tommy Pham.
Yeah.
Okay. Outfield DH. We mentioned about if you need a DH, put it in your spot. He's hitting 327. With 3 homers, 12 RBIs, he has hits in 5 of 6 games, 5 runs, 5 2 or more hit games. Okay. And over his last 13 games. So he's swinging the bat and getting on base. And maybe he won't give you a whole lot of stats otherwise, because the rest of that lineup, and we could have mentioned Eloy Jimenez when we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And surprisingly enough, he's on the IL. Raise your hand if you're surprised by that.
Yeah.
I don't see any hands, so no one's surprised. But for the meantime, Tommy Pham is a guy who can get you some stats if you need outfield help.
I like it. I was going to mention Chris Paddock this week. He's 8.1% owned, pitcher for Minnesota. He's done decent, especially as of late, but he's got Kansas City this week, so I'm going to hold off on suggesting him for this week, depending on his matchup. Again, he's somebody that could be valuable for you. I'm going to go back to the offensive side of things, to a guy that's owned in 1.2% of leagues.
Wow.
He's eligible at shortstop, second base, and outfield. He plays for the Miami Marlins, Otto Lopez. He's playing second base for the Marlins, and actually he's kind of held that spot. He did take today off, but up until then, that's the position he's manning right now. He's got 3 home runs and 2 stolen bases, batting .284 on the season. He's been around pretty much all May. And again, he's just producing. Each series, he's getting positive points along the way. And again, he gives you a lot of flexibility. So if you get a guy that goes on the IL and you need someone to fill a spot, Otto Lopez can fill a few spots for you. And right now he's playing decent baseball, and he is more than likely available in your league at 1.2% owned. I'm not a Marlins guy this year. I'm not adding a whole lot of Marlins, but I like what Lopez is doing right now. I did add him to one of my teams this week.
Okay, so yeah, there's not a lot alike to about Miami Marlins,
right?
Luzardo, and that's pretty much the end of that train. But
yep,
so that's a guy right there. Got an opportunity because they traded away Arias.
Yep,
and he's made the most of it.
You're right,
and that's all you can ask for out of a guy who gets an opportunity and takes it. And then we could say the same thing about Myers. Because he was in there because Chas McCormick was on the injured list. Well, McCormick's back, but guess what? Myers is still playing. Because he took the opportunity, and now they can't get rid of him.
You're right.
So,
and I think Lopez was filling in for Anderson when he got hurt at short. When Anderson came back, he flipped over to second. I believe is the way it worked out. I'm not saying I watched a whole lot of Marlins baseball this year.
No.
I believe that's the situation he was in there as well. So there's some good options out there to add this week. Players that you can definitely find and help your team out. And again, listen, fantasy baseball in most cases is a daily thing, and you got to keep track of who's around, who's doing what.
You do.
You're going to turn the ball. Now, Kevin, you make more moves than anybody I've ever met. But that being said, it's just watching that bottom of your roster and knowing when to let guys go and knowing when to pick guys up, watching those matchups and things like that. I know I've had people tell me one of the things that I've garnered from your guys' show is paying attention to who guys are playing. And when they're at Colorado and they're batting, well, they're good to have in the lineup when they're playing at Colorado. So those kinds of things, it's important. If you want to win, you got to put work in. Just plain and simple. You're not going to win by luck unless you're playing a bunch of kids. You're not going to win by luck, and so pay attention.
No.
Make the moves necessary, and add people, drop people, and make sure you get those injured people on the IL. My goodness, come on, people, get with the program. All right, let's take a real quick look before we close out the program today at our league. We've got a 10-man league. We've got one guy who's undefeated. We got one guy who is winless so far on the season as well. I did see he's not winless anymore. Congratulations.
That's right. I saw that. That's
Grant
right. He cleared the first hurdle. So
he made some additions. I noticed, not necessarily additions that I would have made, but still he made some additions and filled out his roster, and he gets the win this week. So congratulations, Brent. Shout out to you as well. My dad was talking about the opportunity to jump into that playoff spot with me and you playing each other. And I think Chase and Dan are playing each other as well. Well, Dad loses to Mike Brown this week. So
I saw that.
Job, Dad. He always likes to get shouted out, especially when he does poorly. So good job, Dad, on that one. Let's see here. We got a close one. Ryan and Nathan going at it today. And Ryan currently up by 2 fantasy points. I'm looking real quick. I think this one's done. I don't think they've got anybody going. We had the one game that got delayed. But yeah, I think this one's over. So congratulations to Ryan getting win number 3 on the year. And that's good. All the right people are losing this week for me, Kevin, to help me out. And then, of course, the matchup at the top. Dan D'Amico, 7-1. Chase Thornton, 8-0. And looks like D'Amico's going to pull off the win this week. And he'll go to 8-1 and drop Chase to 8-1 as well. So no more undefeated teams, no more winless teams in our league. And now I'm right where I want to be in the playoff hunt as well. So it's been a fun league this year, Kevin. And we're still, we could use a little bit more paying attention from a couple people in the league. But overall, everybody's doing a good job of keeping that lineup stocked. Absolutely.
And you mentioned how I lead the way in maneuvers.
Mm-hmm.
But there's always a reason. I'm not just making maneuvers. You just make maneuvers. There's always a reason why. And so, and I like to do that because it makes it fun to me. And so sometimes I outthink myself, but for the most part, there's a reason why I like this particular matchup. And as you said, at the bottom of the roster, especially in our league, because we have a 26-man roster. And so, and we have a 10-man league, so there's players on the wire. So make moves. And sometimes you make a move and it's the right move, but it doesn't work out. So, just do what you can, do the best you can, and let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah, you've made 104 moves. That's 30 more than the next person. And I've made 47 moves. So I'm a little bit behind you, trying to play catch up right now on this league year. But no, it's fun. I'm looking through. Oh, I made a trade this past weekend, Kevin.
That's right. So you got the catcher that you wanted. I saw that.
Yes, I did. I got William Contreras and Spencer Steer, who Steer had been struggling. I mean, struggling. And I was like, now's the time to get him. I wanted Contreras more than I wanted Steer, but I like Steer a lot because, again, flexibility. So I offered up Jonah Heim, a catcher, Manny Machado, a big name, and Wilyer Abreu, a waiver wire pickup for Boston that had some good run for Contreras and Steer, and she accepted. And I was like, sweet. so I like that trade for me, of course.
Yeah, I liked it as well when I saw that. And Steer, as you mentioned, well, Cincinnati in particular, everyone was struggling, but
right. Ooh,
Ellie climbed back on that train just as fast. So
yeah, Ellie De La Cruz has looked really bad as of late to go on to that. But so here's the advice in this trade. Manny Machado is a big name. He'd been fine this year, hadn't been bad. I think when I traded him, he was in the 90 point wise. But he's a big name. And sometimes when you want to get guys you want, you got to throw out a big name. And you can sometimes find a big name that isn't crushing it and get a good return for that. And I think Manny Machado I haven't talked to the person I traded with, but I think Manny Machado was probably a big part of that trade where they're like, ooh, I can get Manny Machado. And all I have to do is give up a catcher and a struggling Spencer Steer. Well, it works out maybe for both of us, but I'm very happy with the return on that trade.
I would be as well. And, sometimes it depends on who you're dealing with, because he came to me with that trade. I'll be like, Manny Machado, that's a no.
Right. 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 Yeah.
So, you do things to improve your team. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
Whether you're making moves, trades, whatever it is, improve your team. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, I tried hard to get Ronald Acuna in the last week. I made many different offers, and all of them have been turned down, which I don't blame Mike for doing, of course. Nope. But I figured I'd take a swing at him. He hasn't had a great year, so thought maybe I could get him, throw some guys at him that have scored way better than Acuna, but obviously are not as good as Acuna. But Mike didn't take the bait, so congratulations to Mike for holding on to Acuna, and hopefully you can survive the injury situation.
Hopefully so. And another guy that we can mention is Julio Rodriguez.
Yeah.
Okay. Who might have gotten himself maybe on track, because he had a good game today. And so maybe the window, if you're trying to make a move on him, might be closed now.
Yeah. Well, our Fantasy Focus is presented by by BellyUpFantasySports.com. Again, it's where you get all Kevin's articles. Kevin, what's dropping this week?
Well, what's dropping is, we're coming to the end of May here. And so I just might do a kind of what we just did and look at this, because it's 2 months in, and see who's done well, who has not. And so that's where I'm leaning towards right now. And I have an article I dropped this week on Kean Coleman of the Buffalo Bills. Of course, it's a fantasy football article.
Yeah.
And why I think that he would be an excellent value rookie wide receiver in your rookie drafts. So I know most people, for reasons unknown to me, have already done their rookie drafts, and they were looking to do that like 8 minutes after the draft was over with. Okay, but if you have not done that yet,
yeah,
you could look at that and see how I slot him in there and why I think he's a value.
I like it. And of course, you can follow Kevin online on Twitter or X or whatever you call it at Kevin62 WILSEA. This week, I've got a show coming up this middle of the week. I think it's going to be on Thursday. I haven't talked to my dad about this yet. He'll listen. He'll probably hear this on this show before I talk to him on the phone. But the plan, I think, is going to be for Thursday this week. But anyways, we're going to have a show going on midweek. Follow us on social media at Sports Stove to find out the exact date. It's usually Wednesday night at 8, but I'm not sure yet how that's going to work out. Anyways, we'll have a show sometime this week, and we'll be talking baseball, basketball, maybe some football, some other things going on in the world of sports, and some NASCAR, of course, as the Coca-Cola 600 is going on right now, and the Indy 500 earlier today. So we'll talk some, I know Indy 500 is not NASCAR, so cool it, but we'll be talking some NASCAR this midweek as well from there. So check out our sponsors, SeatGeek.com, use the code BellyUpSports, RighteousFelon.com, use the code STOVE15, and of course, check out Kevin's articles on BellyUpFantasySports.com as well. The plan is to be back next week with more fantasy baseball advice as well. And good luck to you Cubbies out there. May you survive the curse this week. All right. Thanks for tuning in. By the way, Kevin, you said it great at the beginning of the show about Memorial Day. And again, I think, sometimes we forget why we're taking the day off tomorrow. And so make sure you take some time to be grateful for the many blessings we have in this country, and to be thankful for those who have sacrificed for us, and be thinking of and praying for the families of those who are dealing with that loss as well. So I think that was very well said at the beginning, Kevn, from there. All right. So enjoy your time.
About hot dogs and hamburgers. That's for sure.
Right. But enjoy your time with family tomorrow.
Absolutely. Enjoy it.
And hopefully you have a day off of work as well. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in to today's edition of the Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show. We'll be back next week to talk more fantasy baseball. Until then, we'll see you around the Sports Stove.
Have a great week.